is the race against is it Google versus OpenAI? Like, is it just everyone scrambling to try to make the most?
Well, the firing shot was when ChatGPT launched a year ago, November of 2022, I guess. Because when that launched publicly, they were basically, inviting the whole world to play with this very advanced technology. And Google and Anthropic and the other companies, they had their own models as well. Some of them were holding them back. But once OpenAI does this and it becomes this darling of the world and it's this super spectacle and
remember,
shiny.
2 months, it gains 100 million users.
Yeah. Super popular.
Yeah. No other technology has
done that in history.
Yeah.
It took Instagram like 2 years to get to 100 million users. It took TikTok 9 months, but ChatGPT it took 2 months to get to 100 million users. So when that happens, if you're Google or you're Anthropic, the other big AI company building to artificial general intelligence, are you going to sit there and say, we're going to keep doing this slow and steady safety work in a lab and not release our stuff? No. Because the other guy released it. Right. So just like the race to the bottom of the brainstem in social media was like, oh shit, they launched Infinite Scroll, we have to match them. Well, oh shit, if you launched ChatGPT to the public world, I have to start launching all these capabilities. And then the meta problem, and the key thing we want everyone to get, is that they're in this competition to keep pumping up and scaling their model. And as you pump it up to do more and more magical things, and you release that to the world, what that means is you're releasing new kind of capabilities. Think of them like magic wands or powers into society. Like, GPT-2 couldn't write a 6th grade person's homework for them, right? It wasn't advanced enough. GPT-2 was like a couple generations back of what OpenAI right now is GPT-4. That's what's launched right now. So GPT-2 was like, 3 or 4 years ago. And it wasn't as capable. It couldn't do 6th grade essays. The images that DALL-E 1 would generate were like kind of messier. They weren't so clear. But what happens is as they keep scaling it, suddenly it can do marketing emails. Suddenly it can write 6th graders' homework. Suddenly it knows how to make a biological weapon. Suddenly it can do automated political lobbying. It can write code. It can find cybersecurity vulnerabilities in code. GPT-2 did not know how to take a piece of code and say, what's a vulnerability in this code that I could exploit? GPT-2 couldn't do that. But if you just pump it up with more data and more compute, and you get to GPT-4, suddenly it knows how to do that. So think of this, there's this weird new AI, and we should say more explicitly that there's something that changed in the field of AI in 2017 that everyone needs to know, because I was not freaked out about AI at all, until this big change in 2017.
It's really important to know this because we've heard about AI for the longest time, and you're like, yep, Google Maps still mispronounces like the street name, and like Siri just doesn't work. And this thing happened in 2017. It's actually the exact same thing that said, all right, now it's time to start translating animal language. And it's where underneath the hood, the engine got swapped out, and it was a thing called transformers. And the interesting thing about this new model called transformers is the more data you pump into it and the more like computers you let it run on, the more superpowers it gets. But you haven't done anything differently. You just give more data and run it on more computers.
Like it's reading more of the internet, and it's just throwing more computers at the stuff that it's read on the internet. Yeah. And out pops out, suddenly it knows how to explain jokes. You're like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah. Or now it knows how to play chess. And all it's done is predict, all you've asked it to do is let me predict the next character or the next word.
Give the Amazon example.
Oh, yeah. This is interesting. So this is 2017. OpenAI releases a paper where they train this AI, it's one of these transformers, a GPT, to predict the next character of an Amazon review. Pretty simple. But then they're looking inside the brain of this AI, and they discover that there's one neuron that does best in the world sentiment analysis, like understanding whether the human is feeling like good or bad about the product. And you're like, that's so strange. You asked it just to predict the next character. Why is it learning about how a human being is feeling? And it's strange until you realize, oh, I see why. It's because to predict the next character really well, I have to understand how the human being is feeling to know whether like the word is going to be like a positive word or a negative word.
And this wasn't programmed?
No. It was an emergent behavior. Yeah. And it's really interesting that like GPT-3 had been out for I think a couple years until a researcher thought to ask, oh, I wonder if it knows chemistry. And it turned out it can do research-grade chemistry at the level, and sometimes better, than models that were explicitly trained to do chemistry.
Like there was these other AI systems that were trained explicitly on chemistry, and it turned out GPT-3, which is just pumped with more, reading more and more of the internet and just like thrown with more computers and GPUs at it, suddenly it knows how to do research-grade chemistry. So you could say, how do I make VX nerve gas? And suddenly that capability is in there. And what's scary about it is that we didn't know that it had that capability until years after it had already been deployed to everyone.
And in fact, there is no way to know what abilities it has. Another example is, you know, theory of mind, like my ability to sit here and sort of like model what you're thinking, sort of like the basis for being able to do strategic thinking.
So like when you're nodding your head right now, we're like testing, like, how well are we explaining?
Right.
No one thought to test any of these, transformer-based models, these GPTs, on whether they could model what somebody else was thinking. And it turns out like GPT-3 was not very good at it. GPT 3.5 was like at the level, I don't remember the exact details now, but it's like at the level like a 4-year-old or 5-year-old. And GPT-4 like was able to pass these sort of theory of mind tests up near like a human adult. And so it's like it's growing really fast. And you're like, why is it learning how to model how other people think? And then it all of a sudden makes sense. If you are predicting the next word for the entirety of the internet, then, well, it's going to read every novel. And for novels to work, the characters have to be able to understand how all the other characters are working and what they're thinking and what they're strategizing about. It has to understand how French people think and how they think differently than German people. It's read all the internet, so it's read lots and lots of chess games. So now it's learned how to model chess and play chess. It's read all the textbooks on chemistry, so it's learned how to predict the next characters of text in a chemistry book, which means it has to learn chemistry. So you feed in all of the data of the internet and ends up having to learn a model of the world in some way, because like language is sort of like a shadow of the world. It's like you imagine like casting lights from the world and it creates shadows, which we talk about as language. And the AI is learning to go from like that flattened language and like reconstitute, like make the model of the world. And so that's why these things, the more data and the more computers you throw at them, the better and better it's able to understand all of the world that is accessible via text and now video and image. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.